I am so blessed. I feel so happy, and I know you do too. I know you do. We just celebrated Easter. For those of you who are Christian like me, it is such an important holiday, probably one of the most important holidays, right? The resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, our life, in him and with him, right? It is about saving our souls, right? It is about walking in his footsteps. It's about doing the right thing. And sometimes I think, like for so many of us, and that is regardless of whatever your beliefs are, I mean, we get down. We feel like, how are we going to overcome these obstacles? How are we going to overcome the evil that we are faced with in our world today? And believe me, it is an extreme evil. There are issues that we are dealing with as human beings that we have never dealt with since the beginning of time. Ideas are all the same, but the potential for us to harm our world, I mean us, I'm talking about us, humanity, basically the fact that we're on the verge of possibly World War III, that's pretty scary. We watch our country shifting under this radical leftist ideology that eliminates God, that eliminates that fundamental belief in something greater than ourselves, that gives us that kind of feeling like that we could do anything, that miracles can happen. We've literally robbed our children. And we're robbing our species, our humanity of that hope, And that can be very, very scary. We see our military in the United States and our governmental institutions under attack by this progressive left that doesn't want you to be involved in your children's life at school, that doesn't want you to say sir or ma'am, that makes everything gray and weird and in the middle, where our children are so confused and they don't even know what's attacking them half the time, but they're stressed. Probably a lot of them have PTSD. They're faced with all kinds of bizarre things that shouldn't even be in their mind. Like when we see those crazy videos of adults allowing their children to be at drag queen events or strip clubs where their children are watching grown men and women, and they're actually being asked to put money in people's lingerie. It's just so bizarre that I don't question evil anymore. I believe it is absolutely an absolute, that it's there. And it scares me. And I see that evil spreading into our institutions, right? Our schools, we've seen that there. We've seen our government go after parents. We've seen teachers try to separate children from their parents. We see the nuclear family under attack, right? And that's why I've brought Lieutenant Colonel Alan West on the show. We're going to dissect this. We're going to talk. I know this is something that all of you listeners, I've seen in your messages to me on Twitter. I've seen them on YouTube. Everybody's a little bit scared. But Easter woke us up. Easter is an awakening. It's a reminder that the sacrifices of Christ are real, that he is there for us, that we have hope, and that as long as we stick together, as long as you and I have faith, have real faith, and we stand up to that evil and just say, no more, sorry, you're not allowed in my life. You're not allowed to interfere with my children or my family or their schooling. And we're going to put a stop to this. As long as we stick together, we are going to make it through this. And I'm going to be right back with Alan West in a few minutes. But first, I want to tell you about Fast growing trees. Yes. So it was Easter. Beautiful flowers. It's spring. Everything is beautiful outside. I know here in Texas, it's blue bonnets everywhere, and beautiful pink flowers and purple flowers and blue flowers. And I want you to have a garden that is just as beautiful. And by the way, gardens are amazing therapy. They are great. They are great for you. They're great for me. You get out there, you get away from your phone, get away from television, spend some time with your family. You plant beautiful flowers, you plant trees, you get sunshine on your face. You just feel good about yourself. And while you're doing that, guess what? You're making your whole yard look beautiful. Even if you have to have just a little garden, even if you don't even have a big backyard, you can do that. You can take some time. It's like, it really is therapy. I'm telling you, even for those of you who think you don't have a green thumb, you actually really do. You just have to slow yourself down enough, give yourself enough time to get out there and do something that's productive and beautiful. And believe me, having a garden, growing trees is that. And I trust me on this. And now Fast Growing Trees is a sponsor of the show. I love, love, love what they do. They make it so simple. You know, you have like a direct line to your own private nursery with your own private teacher and your plant expert who will show you what plants grow best in your area and region of the country. And they curate thousands of easy to grow plants, shrubs, trees, flowers. Even beautiful Meyer lemons to evergreens and everything else in between. And you won't have to go on Google. You won't have to do a big search. You won't have to pull out the big books. They will teach you how to do it. So join 1.5 million happy Fast Growing Tree customers. Go to fastgrowingtrees.com/Carter. Now you have to put /Carter to get this amazing, amazing savings, which is 15% off your entire order. Think about that. You're going to get 15% off your entire order at fastgrowingtrees.com /Carter. That's fastgrowingtrees.com/Carter. So I have Lieutenant Colonel Alan West on the show, who asked me to call him Alan, but oh my gosh, I just think he's just wonderful. He's amazing. He is somebody who really understands not only the American dream, but what it's like to fight for the American dream, right? He is part of the less than 1% at any given time of men and women who have volunteered to fight for this country, our beautiful nation, right? To make those sacrifices. And I can tell you this, like my husband, like God bless our best friend who passed away in Afghanistan, Brian Hoke, who my husband loved dearly, and he lost his life there, made the ultimate sacrifice because he believed in, taking that fight to the enemy, not allowing it to come here to our country. But remember, we are fighting right now on multiple fronts. We are fighting an evil we've never really dealt with before. Not the way we're dealing with it now in America. An anti-American progressive left that is turning everything upside down on its head. A progressive left that doesn't even believe, that doesn't want you or your children to believe in a God, in a higher power, that is asking you to sacrifice all of the fundamental values and morals that make our nation so great. And sure, we're not perfect. We make all kinds of mistakes. But we find a way to forgive each other. We move on. We live by a moral code. We live by moral values. And unfortunately, I've seen a growing group of people, I know you've seen it too, that are stripped of that. They don't care. They don't have those same moral values. They don't stand for those same virtues. And we've got to find a way to speak up and speak out against that, not worry about being censored. Don't worry, we're here. I'm here for you. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West is there for you. My friend, Sean Hannity, he is there for you. There are so many of us that are willing to stand up. President Trump, others, Governor Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Mike Pompeo. I can talk on and on. There's so many people out there. We are all standing up together, fighting the good fight in the way that we need to, in a way that reminds me and that follows in the footsteps of Christ. Somebody who exemplified everything we wish we could be as a human being, but can't. We just can't get there, right? But we know what we need to do. We know the path that we need to take. And we put our faith in Christ because we have to. Or we put our faith in what we believe. We find a faith in God, something bigger than ourselves. I want to tell you a little bit about Colonel West Allen. He's amazing. He's executive director of the American Constitutional Rights Union. He was a former Texas GOP chair, author, former congressman, host of the Steadfast and Loyal podcast. And a little bit about him, he grew up in a culture of military service, like on my father's side. His father was served in combat in World War II, like my father did. And his brother served in Vietnam, respectfully. And West's mother worked as a civilian employee, listen to this, for the U.S. Marine Corps. He joined the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps in the 10th grade before graduating from Henry W. Grady High School in Atlanta. And then he joined the Reserve Officers Training Corps while attending the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. He is, I can't even begin to tell you, he is one of those people that young people at the Young Americans Foundation, they will sell out his speeches because he is just that good. He is a motivator. He is a great American, and he is a true patriot. Lieutenant Colonel Allen West. I'm going to call you Allen. You've asked me to call you Allen, but I have to give props where props is due. My husband would be mad at me. He's a military man himself, so you know that if I didn't address you by with the proper etiquette here. But I have a lot of respect for you. I'm so grateful for you to be on the show. This is your first time on the Sara Carter Show, and I can't wait to be on your show too, Allen. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Well, it's my pleasure to be with you. And I just want to thank you for all the things that you've done in service to this great nation, starting with your service over in Afghanistan. And please give your husband, Martin, a hearty hooah and tell him Army strong.
I will. I'll definitely tell him that. He'll be so happy to hear that. I'm so grateful to have you on the show because there's so much we need to talk about. There are so many changes in our country, so much so I think that even when I talk to my husband and I talk to a lot of the men and women who served in the military or continue to serve, they're shocked by it. They're shocked by it. Let's start with something that my producers are really interested in, and so am I, because I know this is it touches home. It's this push for a woke military. When you served our country, and you still do every single day, you're out there fighting the good fight. Did you see these seeds of anti-conservative, woke, anti-Christian inside the military, or is this something new?
No, it's absolutely something new. As a matter of fact, I remember having a Bible on my desk as a young battery commander, a captain, and all the way up to the time I was a lieutenant colonel. I remember, faith being so important. And many times we were encouraged to go to our chaplain services. Even if we weren't deployed, we'd go to our services there on Fort Bragg or Fort Riley or what have you. And we were focused on our core competencies, which was to deploy and to fight and to win. And it wasn't about all this equity and all this equality of outcomes. It certainly was not about this cultural Marxism that we see creeping into our military. And what is so funny, Sarah, is that I think there are people in the military that realize that, because now you see that the Army has gone back to the original motto when I came in, be all you can be, when they have gotten out there with all of these different type of mottos that really took us away from our, like I say, our core values and our core mission. But when I look at now, we're inviting people like Ibrahim X. Kendi into the military. We have these DEI offices in the military. You know, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, was a brigade commander in the 82nd Airborne Division when I was stationed at Fort Bragg as a major, and everyone looked up to him. But now it seems that he has become more politicized, just the same as Mark Milley and all of them. So who would have ever thought that the Secretary of Defense would send a memo out to the force telling female troops that they had to get used to biological males using their latrine and bathroom facilities. So we've completely gone off the rails since the Obama administration. That's when this really got started with this purging of the senior military leadership. And now we see where we are.
I know. And this is what I don't understand. We have been through 20 years, right? The longest war in Afghanistan. You and I both know what our men and women went through there. And we saw the horrific withdrawal of our forces, forced withdrawal of our forces, and the turnover of Afghanistan basically to a terrorist regime, to the Taliban, after everything that happened. And we see the threat coming from China now, from the CCP. We see the threat from Russia. We see what's happening in Ukraine. And yet our military is focused on this woke ideology with no concern, it appears, not Austin, not Milley, with the threat that poses to our national security in our country right here. Like, I mean, are we going to be able to handle two war fronts? I don't think so. Are we going to be able to? Yeah, and we're seeing the threat growing all around us. And I'll get into that with you with China and the encroachment of China in our hemisphere and what's happening here. Why are they doing this? I almost feel as if they don't care about our security anymore. There's something underlying this that is a sickness, that is kind of like a virus, an anti-American, an anti-security situation that is going to put us in a really bad predicament.
Well, you have to understand the mindset of the progressive socialist left. They don't see China as an enemy. They don't see Russia as an enemy. They don't see Islamic jihadism as an enemy. Who they see as an enemy is their political opposition right here in the United States of America. That's why they're willing to go after a former president and a presidential candidate and try to put him in jail. That's why they go after pro-life advocacy centers and people speaking about pro-life. That's why they attack constitutional conservatives. They'll withhold exculpatory evidence and put people in jail. They don't go after someone like Antifa, which is really a domestic terrorist organization, or even the Mexican narco criminal terrorists, the cartels. But what they want to do is make sure that they can have complete control and rule here in the United States of America. And they'll cut deals. I mean, you know, Joe Biden is not going to be strong on the international stage because what's more important for them is the consolidation of power here. And they'll just try to compromise, appease, negotiate, or, you know, whatever is necessary to just, you know, be allowed to maintain their power. So, yes, the weakness that we see, the lack of focus of our military is enticing. And you go back to the Obama administration. That was when Russia went into Ukraine the first time. They took over Crimea, they took over eastern Ukraine. And what did Obama do? Obama sent socks and MREs. But who was the real enemy for the Obama administration? You and I, us, the political opposition. So that's their focus.
That's absolutely true. And I want to go back to President Obama because I remember when he held the olive branch out to Iran, he was just, it was like immediately came in, immediately with the olive branch. I saw the same situation between President Obama and Assad of Syria. And you could see it you could see the fires start to percolate in the Middle East. And that's when we saw the rise of the Arab Spring. That's when we saw, and we later discovered how much the Obama administration, then, of course, Vice President Joe Biden, we didn't know much about him and his dealings with China then, and his son Hunter Biden and all of their connections. But we saw what happened when the Obama administration took foreign policy, turned it over on its head. It became America last, not America first. As you know, I really, for the first time, saw a president do that under President Trump. And I wonder what is happening here, because you know, as I do, and probably better than I do, that the enemy strikes while the iron is hot. And it's always up to the enemy. We don't have a say. the enemy has the say, right? I mean, if the enemy wants to attack, they'll attack. Do you not see what's happening with China, with Russia, these negotiations, the removal of, the dollar, for example, in Brazil, moving towards the Chinese currency, moving the Saudis doing the same thing, and now China saying they're going to cut some kind of negotiation or deal between Ukraine and Russia? Do you not see this as China's time, the Chinese Communist Party's time to strike while the iron is hot? I mean, they've already let us know. They've flown their balloon over. They were able to measure, and I believe they were measuring our nuclear ICBM silos in Montana.
Yes.
I mean, are they preparing the battlefield? I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah,
and are we asleep at the wheel?
Well, it's not just that we're asleep at the wheel, we are enabling it. We are aiding and abetting the rise of our enemies, our geopolitical foes. And what they're doing is basically with that spy balloon, it's called the intelligence preparation of the battlefield. And they're setting the conditions economically, militarily, diplomatically, the whole thing, all the elements of national power. And I just have to go back. One of the things that you forgot about Barack Obama was his trip over to Egypt when he spoke there at the University of Cairo, and he put the Muslim Brotherhood members right there in the front row. He endorsed and congratulated Mohammed Morsi. So here's the granddaddy of Islamic jihadism, the Muslim Brotherhood, and the president of the United States of America is congratulating them. So we have gone back to that policy that we saw that is once again continuing on in what is the third term of Barack Obama. But yes, China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, the Islamic jihadists, and now you see the formation of the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa is part of that. Now they're trying to bring in Mexico as well.
Right.
This is a new axis that is forming because, again, they see this as an opportunity. So when you're President Biden and you come in, the very first thing you do is undercut our energy independence. You shut down the Keystone XL pipeline, and energy security is a pivotal point for your economic security and your national security. So now we're going out there and we're begging others. We're selling off our strategic petroleum reserve to China. We're depleting it by 1/3. We're not replenishing it whatsoever. So yes, they see this as an incredible opportunity, and they have their one belt, one road strategy where they say they want to be a global hegemonic dominance.
And that's exactly it. And you brought something up, and you're right. I did forget about Egypt, and that speech was actually a turning point, I believe, in setting U.S. policy overseas. And for everybody to remember this part of the speech, where President Obama apologized for the United States as well, and they called it the apology tour. I remember back then it was like, what's he doing? Why is he apologizing for our great nation, and setting it back in the eyes of governments that really did not appreciate or even exemplify those basic liberties and freedoms that we have here. The same ones that you, sir, have put your life on the line for, that my husband has, that all of the men and women in the United States of America that have served in our armed forces have every single day of their lives, whether they're overseas or whether they're here. It's an all volunteer force. And when they're called to duty, they're called to duty. And I think that is what is so distressing to me when I go out onto the streets in New York. And I don't know if you had a chance to see that, but I was out there in front of the courthouse, in front of the criminal courthouse in Manhattan. I was thinking about what DA Bragg had done, and I just couldn't shake it that we're eating each other alive. And I'm watching our people so divided and seeing our youth basically succumb to this kind of leftist Marxist ideology. And I don't know how we are going to find our way out of this and fix it back to where we need to be to make America that beautiful beacon on the hill once again that the rest of the world looks for and looks to for answers.
It's very interesting you bring that up because I remember back when they were having the young people protests in Hong Kong, and you actually had these students out there carrying American flags and singing the national anthem. And so you have kids over protesting against a radical communist regime, but yet you have kids in the United States of America protesting because they want socialism, Marxism, and ultimately communism, because that is the goal of socialism. So, how did we get to this part? You're absolutely right, because we have gotten away from teaching our children about what freedom and liberty is all about. We don't teach our history. And the left has been very good in coming in and controlling academia, controlling the media narrative, and of course, controlling the courts. That's where they want to try to implement everything. And we don't have schoolhouse rock anymore, like when I grew up, and you could learn about civics and you learned about history. We don't talk about these things in our schools. As a matter of fact, right now in our schools, we're talking about more, you're an oppressor and I'm oppressed. And this is all the cultural Marxism that tries to separate and divide us. And the interesting thing about looking at you out there with those young people and that anti-Trump crowd, they have no idea what is going on. I mean, they're just out there because they hate a person. They don't understand the rule of law. Many of them probably have never heard of the United States Constitution, definitely have not read it. They don't understand what statute of limitations mean. They don't understand that you can't just willy-nilly take a misdemeanor and upgrade it to a felony while you have felony offenses and you're downgrading to misdemeanors that put their lives and safety in jeopardy there in New York City. So we have got to get back to basics. And I always tell people it starts in the home. And how do we correct this? I've always said the most important elected position in the United States of America is school board. And I think the only good thing that came out of COVID was that parents all of a sudden realized something is jacked up and we have got to get involved. We have got to get activated. And guess what? Look how vehemently the left responded when you got the National Association of School Boards going to the Department of Justice saying, declare these parents domestic terrorists. It's not Antifa, not Jane's Revenge. It's the parents who want to make sure that they can get a proper education, not indoctrination of their children. So I think that's the point that we have to kick off and start at in the home, in our schools, and take back that parental choice and parental freedom.
I absolutely agree with you. I have children. My youngest is 10. We have 6 kids that some of them have their own children. I believe this is the most important role we can play in our nation, is to have strong families and to defend our children. I'll be back in a moment with Lieutenant Colonel West, but first I want to share one of my favorite companies with you, and that's Allegiance Gold. Gold and silver. Listen to this. They allow you to protect what you worked so hard for. And you can see what's happening right now in our country. You can see what China is doing now, basically pushing the dollar out. We saw that in Brazil. We're seeing it in Saudi Arabia. We're seeing it across the globe. You want to be able to diversify your money. And part of diversifying your money is investing in gold and silver. Yes, it is so important. And right now you're going to get an offer from Allegiance Gold. You will get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. I want you to hear this again. You'll get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. My friends at Allegiance Gold can help you protect your IRA, your 401k, your physical gold and silver can be delivered directly and securely right to your front door. They will educate you on the benefits of physical gold because they care and they want to build that long-term relationship with you. Get $5,000 of free silver on a qualifying purchase when you tell them that Sara sent you. So don't wait. Call or click today, 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, SARA, no H, or go to protectwithsara.com. We can't control the Biden administration, folks, but we can prepare. 877-702-7272. That's 877-702-SARA, SARA, or protectwithsara.com. But what scares me so much, Alan, is the difference in what we've seen in our government. And I'm going to say going back all the way to the Clinton years, when everything shifted, when it became much more difficult to fire someone in government, right? You can move someone over, but you can't get rid of them, right? They're going to stay there forever. It's kind of like tenure as a teacher, in the public schools, but we can't get rid of them. And the thing is, we created these bureaucracies with people that are ideological. They're sided with one political party, most of them to the left. And we saw what happened to President Trump under this. And we see how they slow roll everything. Or we have a DOJ that's basically owned by one political party. And all of a sudden, there's a two-tier justice system, and the parents are now the terrorists and not ELF, like the Environmental Liberation Organization, or, Janes or Antifa. It's parents and it's Christians and it's Catholics. I couldn't believe the Catholics. I was like, wait a minute, Latin Mass is mostly attended by, older, people that speak Latin. I mean, most people that are young, like I go to the Catholic Church, I could not go to Latin Mass because I wouldn't understand it. But I've never seen radicals there, seen old people there.
Well, the interesting thing is, look at what has just happened in Nashville, where normally this nation would be apoplectic about the fact that 3 9-year-old children were gunned down, shot to death. But that's not the issue. The issue now is Madonna's going to go to Nashville to do a benefit concert for the quote unquote gender dysphoric community. Miley Cyrus is going to go do a concert for the gender dysphoric community. All of a sudden, we're supposed to believe that a mentally disturbed, mentally ill, depressed 28-year-old who was a biological female, thought she was a male, that goes in with 3 weapons and shoots up a Christian school. Now that's the victim. And that's how the left rolls. And it comes back to this moral relativism.
The left, Alan, and companies. Yeah. Look at Anheuser-Busch with Dylan Mulvaney. I mean, he's running around dancing in a little tank top and a pair of tight little pants, and he's now
bad vision. Don't tell me that. Stop.
He's now an example for Nike, for women. And they put his face on the Budweiser can. Well, my mother and let's just go back. My great-great-grandmother was from West Africa in Cuba. My grandmother, she struggled and tried to, to live her life and had to come here with her children as a first, my mom was a immigrant from Cuba. I had to, wear little shoes from the thrift store and cut the back of them just to walk to a factory to go to work, to give me a life, right? Yeah. To give me a future. She's not on the cover of Bud Light. Or she's not a representative, but a man is.
Yeah. Well, just the same as all of a sudden we think it is, courageous for a biological male who was ranked 462nd in his swimming events to all of a sudden say that I'm a guy, I'm a girl, and we put him out there on the cover of magazines and we give him all of these awards. See, that's this moral relativism. You can't even say mom. Coming back to the military thing, United States Air Force Academy said you cannot address people as mother and father, mom and dad. You got to make sure that you understand what their pronouns are. The United States military now has come out and say you can't say sir and ma'am because that is, part of this new wokeness. You can address people by their rank and their last name because they say that is what's most acceptable and comfortable. We're upside down. And so, again, this is about us taking back over our homes, taking back over our schools, and telling this cultural Marxism that we're not going to allow it to happen. Because if we don't, then we're going to see, as it says in Isaiah 5:20, good is going to be called evil, evil is going to be called good, bitter is going to be called sweet, sweet is going to be called bitter. And that's where we are right now. So yes, the left wants one thing. They want to divide us, separate us based upon their collective visions of the respective groups, pit us against each other so that they can undermine this country. And we've got to see it for what it is. And we need courageous leaders out there. They're going to stand up and call it for what it is and stop talking about my friend from the other side of the aisle or my colleague or whatever that crap. They're not your friend. They're not your colleague. They are seeking to undermine this country. And your husband and I, and several generations in my family, took a note to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against what? All enemies, foreign and domestic. And so we need to be very clear about that.
I sat there yesterday thinking about this. And when I went on the show with Sean last night, we were talking and Sean was saying, well, Sarah, you're walking around with a Fox News mic and, they're going to come after you. You got to take that flag off. We were joking around about it. And I said, you know what, Sean, no, I'm not taking it off. They're walking around with shirts that are inflammatory, that degrade women, that degrade our society. Why should I have to hide who I am? Why should I have to put myself away and not defend my friends? I don't believe in starting something that would end up in a problem for anyone. I didn't want to see anyone get hurt. But I don't believe that we can afford to be quiet anymore, Colonel West. I don't believe that it is acceptable. It's not acceptable anymore. We have to defend our children. We have to defend our nation. We have to defend our friends. And I'm going to ask you, and I'll let you close up with however you want to end this, but I'm really worried. And I know a lot of Americans are. And I'm going to say it, like I said a little bit earlier in our conversation. I feel like our enemies are watching us now. They're seeing our nation fractured and they're debating on whether to make a move or not. And I believe they are making that move. I don't know how it's going to be. I don't know if it's economic. I don't know if it'll be through the military. I don't know what's going to happen. But what I do know is that I'm afraid. A lot of Americans are afraid. What do we do? How do we stick together? How do we make 2024 count? How do we move forward?
Well, first of all, I will tell you this, and everyone that's watching, Sarah, do not be afraid. Do not have fear. You know, if you believe in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, if you're a Christian, God told Joshua, "Be strong and of good courage, for the Lord thy God shall never leave you nor forsake you." Isaiah 54:17 says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn." That's the heritage of those who love the Lord. There will be trials and tribulation in this world, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. John 16:33. But the Army taught me that, you know, we're not really smart soldiers. I wasn't in the Air Force. They're really smart people. But we write things down in the Army. So I always have my 3x5 cards that I carry. And one of the quotes on one of my 3x5 cards says this: "The uncontested absurdities of today are the accepted slogans of tomorrow. They come to be accepted by degrees, by dint of constant pressure on one side and constant retreat on the other, until one day when they are suddenly declared to be the country's official ideology." That was written by Ayn Rand in the 1950s. Where we are today has been a slow, constant, incremental drip, drip, drip from the progressive socialist left. We're not going to turn it around overnight, but we have to have the perseverance. We have to have the character. We have to have the hope, not the hope in, you know, in man and what he does, but a greater hope and a greater power, which is the fundamental establishment of this great nation, our Judeo-Christian faith heritage. And I think that the greater days of the United States of America are ahead of us, because we're realizing that we're being pushed into a corner, and we don't like that. And you're going to see more people standing up, as I see when I travel across the country. They say, we want to restore this great nation. So as we get ready to go into Easter, and I'll say Happy Easter, it's all about the resurrection. And I think that we're going to see a great resurrection here in the United States of America, a return to our core constitutional, conservative, classical liberal principles of individual rights, freedoms, and liberties.
You're a brilliant man, Alan, a brilliant man. I'll walk alongside you anytime. And I absolutely believe that. I absolutely believe you. I think that there are so many amazing Americans all across the country, people, even in New York. I was in the city. I said, you know, that was a small fraction of people that were, you know, violent and upset and radical. But for the majority of people, whether they agreed with Trump or whether they didn't, whether they were anti-Trump or pro-Trump, they were good people. They talked to me. They were nice. And I believe that we still have that. And I believe that as long as we stick together and as long as we don't remain silent, we have a chance at, you're right, the best days are ahead of us. And they will be, as long as we stand up for what we believe in and not allow this, I would have to say, this strange, bizarre, radical left to take over, to take our voices. Thank you for being a part of the show.
Thank you so very much, Sarah, and I look forward to being back with you.
That's our show for today. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Again, happy Easter to every single one of you. You can't even imagine how much it warms my heart to read your emails, to see your messages on Twitter, on Rumble, on YouTube. I really, truly believe that we are one big family. This is the United States of America, folks. You're my brother. You're my sisters. We fight alongside one another. We protect our nation together, and God help us. And we protect our children. Let's do it together. We're in this. We really are in this together. Let's own it. Let's take it back. Let's tell the progressive left that they are no longer welcome at our dinner tables, on our TV, in our advertisements, wherever, in our stores. Let's protect our children. Let's take the time to save our country. Follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on Twitter at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless our great nation. God bless our military. God bless Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, and God bless the great state of Texas.